When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
What the hell? Everything's jacked up. Mittens isn't here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Meta Show. Today is January the 16th. I am Brisk Rubal. I am joined not by the Matani today. Let me tell you guys, fish keeping is serious business. It's very difficult. It's very hard. He needed a break. So instead of the Matani, we have with us the scion of Karmafleet on their 6th birthday, my dear friend Merkel Chen. Thank you for joining us today on the Meta Show. Hi, Merk. How you doing?
Oh, it is my damn pleasure, Brisk. I'm great. Peachy, thanks for asking. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We've got two big-time FC gents with us here on the show. Smug levels will be nominal, I think. I don't know that we have anything absolutely absurd planned. Fish chat may be banned halfway through the show. We'll find out. I don't know. I feel like we've exhausted the fish thing, but we'll see. Brisk, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing all right. I will say that the amount of time that we have had to spend bashing structures at late at night has kept me interested in EVE in the last couple of days. And I will say this. My new favorite streamer in EVE Online is right here.
Wow, that's really nice of
Rampage
you to
Incorporated, say. Mr. Merkelchen, has been taking over the vacuum that has been left by our dear friend Ron, who is no longer streaming EVE, he's streaming Star Citizen. So instead, we've got Merk streaming every night, and he's been getting a good 150, 160 people watching him run around Delve, killing structures with impunity, and drinking an absurd amount of beers while he does it. So it's been a lot of fun.
I can promise you I won't be eating any crayons on stream, but I will do my best to be entertaining in the very least. We took it easy last night. I think by final counts, as we were starting to shut down, we were 14 beers into the evening. That's taking it easy. That's low key. Saturday is the night for celebration, especially a Karmafleet 6th birthday celebration. We are going to rampage with the strength of 1,000 suns. I just can't wait.
And as always, Saturday Night's Forum, every Saturday night, join us. You can watch Mine One. It starts around 10 o'clock Eastern time. That is, 0200 EVE, I think?
0300 when you're in daylight
now.
savings.
All right. So the point of this show, this episode today, we're going to talk a little bit about Karmafleet turning 6 at the end of the show. But one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about the other fronts in World War B. Now, we've had Keisha and Darkshines on the show before, and we'll introduce them in a second when we do the Nullsec Power Hour. We've had one of the benefits to having a group like the Imperium is, especially when we have tons of really solid FCs that can go off and do things on their own. One of the things we've been able to do is, in addition to the fighting in Delve, that's been the sexy front, and everybody's paying attention, and everybody knows what happened in M2 and what's been going on down there. But we've been taking it to them behind the lines in their home territory, at least Legacy's home territory, which is right next door. And the two gentlemen we have with us here have been the lead guys in taking the fight back to the other side. So we're going to get there. We're going to start out now. We're going to talk a little bit with Darkshines, a little bit of Keisha about what's been going on in the rest of World War B here on the Meta Show. Thank you all for joining us. Time for the Nullsec Power Hour. All right, as always, and you guys know these guys because they're pretty common here. Darkshines, lead Strat FC for the Initiative. Keisha, lead Strat FC for the Bastion. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for being here with us.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Everyone, good to see you.
So I wanted to go into just a little bit. If you guys, and I'll start with Keisha and Esoteria. Can you run down what have you guys been doing since the last time we talked? I know that you had been out there trying to harass Test behind the lines. I know you've taken some structures. We got some photos and stuff. Tell us a little about what about the Bastion's been doing in Esoteria.
So we've been just kind of cleaning up the north of Esoteria. We just cleaned out the last Athnor, cleaning out their POCOs so they can't run their PI. We noticed that a lot of them were logging in alts after alts after alts, logging enough, and still doing their PI in the north of ESO. So we just kind of cleaning that up, contesting their jump bridges, watching their structures, unanchoring, and just forcing them to come out and just kind of do nothing.
So if you see, I put this map up here of Esoteria, and if you want to see here, if you want to look, you look around here, you can see that these guys have been totally taking up all of the northeast section of Esoteria. You can see from JAU TAC down all the way down to FN TAC, that whole northwestern quadrant closest to Stain has been completely taken by Bastion as well as Farah and the rest of the Stain Russians. That's pretty significant given the fact that this is like this is their home territory. This is Esoteria. This is where they live. They've been out there, and you guys have been smacking them around. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing in terms of their morale, what kind of structures they've got up? Have they started on anchoring anything? Have you noticed anything like that going on up there?
Yeah, they still kind of have like their corporate fire teams where they have certain corporations designated to cover certain constellations, but they're starting to fizzle out a little bit more. We've got about 300. I think they had about 300 structures remaining in Esoteria that we seeded to just kind of like track them. And I think it was about 4 days ago where 53 structures had either unanchored, either unanchored or been destroyed. So they're pulling out, and there's still probably about another, I'd say another 50 structures unanchoring right now.
See, that strikes me as amusing, because I know a couple weeks ago on the Meta Show, we had the information from Philly. They did their State of the Alliance. They said, we're moving to Delph. So, of course, we responded with, okay, Test's abandoning Esoteria. We forced them out. And one of the reasons he said was that Esoteria was getting very, very hot. He referenced what you guys were doing up there. He referenced that Init had deployed as well. And then we hear later, just a few days later, we hear from ProGod that they're no longer going to be doing that they are going to stay in Esoteria, not giving up any of their space. And now you're telling me that they're unanchoring structures left and right. What does that tell you about, what they're doing up there? What do you think? What's your analysis of that? And I want to ask Merc the same thing.
I think it comes down to like the cost of the war, the cost of losing that many Titans. You see their posts and everything that they're doing, trying to scramble for money. They're doing the bonds now and stuff. I think at like a corp level, they need to find ways to fund the losses. That they still are showing up to a couple final timers that they've pushed us off. We tried to do our first Keepstar ref, got up to about 30%, and then they brought 150 man Munin fleet from T5Z. Made absolutely no fucking sense. They came into the system, we tethered up, they reinforced Astra, and then we anchored bubbles at perches and on gates for 8 systems, and waste their time for an hour and a half and killed some unions on the way there. She's like, why did you bring this fleet here? It makes no sense, especially if you guys are pulling out. Like, I don't get it.
Mark, what do you think? Do you think this is a question of they're leaving Esoteria? Do you think they're broke? They need the structures. They don't want to core them. What do you think the reason is behind what they're doing in ESO?
I think trying to suss out intent or a plan from the Chucklefuck Coalition is going to be incredibly difficult when you apply reason and rational thought. Those two things, they don't have that in their vocabulary. I can tell you that they're running into trouble because they're straddling an immense amount of bullshit, right? You've got to kind of focus, and you know what goons have to do to get to the fight? They undock and they're there. So this whole, one of the people in our leadership is saying, we're going to burn the boats. We're just moving. Just pack all your shit and move. Would you feel really comfortable about that as like a line member when you're starting to see people bouncing off, the Delve timers and things like that? And now the supers and titans and capitals that you've got trapped there in MTech 2, it would feel pretty awful. I can imagine as Brave surveys the field, they see things like Catch burning down as test line members look around and they see ESO getting tuned up. They're thinking, so wait, what you're telling me is We should give up our perfectly good home that we were easily able to maintain control of and move to this new home where 40,000 people who don't like me live. That does not sound like a pathway to victory to me in any way, shape, or form. So that would lead to a very uninspiring offense and a totally flaccid defense, which is exactly what's being seen out there.
And since you brought up Brave, I think that's a great transition. I want to bring Shines in to talk a little bit about this. So Shines, last time we talked to you, we were just off the ESO thing. We had decided we were going to Initiative was going to deploy to Curse. We had just gotten started there. We were worried about getting our structures and oh shit getting killed. That ended up not happening. Give us an update about what's been going on in Curse and in the Ketch region and what you guys have been seeing up there.
Yeah, so obviously the biggest news recently was Brave kind of splitting from from Delve, I guess. The updates came for a lot of Legacy, Brave, and the Warp dudes. And when did that come out? Last week or during the start of this week? They brought fleets back to catch to stop all the smaller elements from taking things in catch. You've got a bunch of different groups. Catch is split up now with the Tickle guys, Simple Farmers, Dread Bomb, Red Alliance, a bunch of smaller groups taking Sov that was previously owned by Legacy. The only Sov that's relatively intact is actually the Brave Sov. They've brought fleets back now. They're not really forming in Delve. They do counterform us whenever we form in Curse. And we have gotten a couple of good fights out of that, some during the week, some this week. We've been reinforcing iHubs. Fortizars, I think Legacy have lost about 7 Fortizars in the Immensity/Catch area over the last few days. And yeah, basically, from what I can tell, Brave are just very focused on trying to get their feet back under them in Catch.
So what I have on the screen here, you guys can see, is unbelievable the amount of space that has been lost in Catch since the start of this war. When this war started, that whole northern area that's all covered by Dread Bomb, you see AT.0, that's all Dread Bomb space. That space was all held by Brave and Drone Walkers and Requiem and those guys. They held all of that area. And then I think it was the Watchmen that ended up controlling that area. Watchmen have fail-skated, they're gone. That area is all gone. The route from Head GP through towards GE TAC was all Brave space before, all test space. Now it's all gone. Simple Farmers, who have been running like a massive guerrilla campaign to screw with Brave, to the point that Brave absolutely hates them with the fire of 1,000 suns. You can see that up there. That area's all been cleared out, and it's just amazing to me how bad Catch looks. And this was Brave's baby, and I have to say, the fact that they end up having to come back, they have to pull the Brave. Brave is on paper the number 4 alliance in terms of size in the Pappy Coalition. They are behind Fraternity, Horde, and Test. They're number 4 on paper. And it's amazing to me that not only are they having trouble maintaining the region that they've held for years, but they have to pull their guys all off the front lines to go do it. And even when they do that, they're still getting their butts kicked. Perfect example, and I want Shines to talk about today. There was a pretty significant chain of battles here, and I'm going to pull up and show you guys this battle report. This was from earlier today, okay? You've got throughout a ton of different regions. You can see all the different regions, all the different systems throughout Curse and Catch that these guys were fighting on. This was Brave and Fire and Legion of Exdeath mainly. They had 554 guys in this fight versus 173 of Simple Farmers, Red Alliance, and in it. We killed 42 billion-isk. We lost 10. We had a number of some pretty significant, pretty crazy fights there, including one of the best bomb runs I've seen in a long time. And I'll show you the pic. This is what it looked like afterwards. That's pretty bad, I gotta say. That is pretty legitimately bad when you lose a hack fleet. And that came just a few hours before, the same thing happened in Delve, where they lost a Serb fleet in Delve, and I'll show you this battle report. This happened a little bit later. It's amazing to me. This one, goons, 13 goons wipe out an entire Serb fleet. 14 million is lost to 26.4 billion is lost. Let me show you this picture. You guys are going to love this one. That's what that looked like at the end. I mean, to lose two massive hack fleets, I feel whoever's selling Serbs in Jeddah has got to be like,
there was a fantastic line in one of the test channels where they were asking, how did this happen? How much did we lose? And the one guy replied and said, 91 Serbs. And someone else replied and said, it's okay. The others lost 101 Serbs.
They're actually playing off how bad the other members of their team are doing compared to them to make themselves feel better. I mean, just today alone, and that doesn't even count the stuff that happened last night, which we'll get into in a little bit. I have to say, it has been a relatively quiet week in terms of these big, massive fights that we've been seeing. And that's one of the things that I think people need to realize is that we've had these big, massive fights. We've had so many of them so close. Where they have the two M2 fights 2 weeks ago. We had, 3 or 4 months ago, we had the big Keepstar fights that were like every other day. We were having a big Keepstar fight. Trillions of ISK getting lost. But it's these constant little 50, 60, 70 billion ISK battles back and forth where one side just gets potatoed by the other. It's just crazy. And that's what we've been seeing. And I think since the M2 tax side, we've been seeing more and more of these where the Imperium comes out on another lopsided win. And I got to say, if your morale is already in the toilet because the cream of your Titan fleet is logged off in M2, and then you see these bombing runs being done in Curse and Catch, and you see these bombing runs being done in Delve, how do you feel? I mean, Merc, what do you think these guys are feeling right now on the other side?
Well, it's a tough spot. I think we talked about this before. You ever dedicate one of your alts to something where you're like, I'm doing this very specific thing with my alt, and I'm going to wrap this alt up, whether it's doing a log off ski somewhere, deep in enemy space in a dread, or camping a system, or pushing them out to high sec. Now imagine that all of your alts are instead trapped in super capitals in M2 TAC, and what are you going to do with yourself? You eventually get to a point where you just start thinking, you know what, I'm either logging out for the next 6 months to wait till the air clears here and I can get back in the game, or I'm going to just log in and say, F it. The way that a lot of people, as you've seen, there continues to be a trickle of ships that just log in. You'll be sitting there and suddenly a fax comes out of warp and gets blown up in quarter of a second, or a super or whatever. I know as a person in leadership, that's a difficult proposition. It's very hard. You have to constantly communicate to your members, letting them know, look, we have a plan. We're enacting our plan. We're making progress with our plan. In the absence of all of those things happening, I don't know exactly what it is that you would say to try to get those people dialed back in. You're in a tough spot because the entire strategy all along the way, the last 8 months, there was no strategic brilliance. There was no 4-dimensional chess taking place. It was show up to the timers with more people than the Imperium had. And that strategy worked for a really long time. Now that all this shit is trapped, you're starting to see some parity between the numbers on some of these bigger timers. And go figure, you put the Imperium within maybe 20% of the hostile form up, and 9 times out of 10, we're going to kick the shit out of these guys because we've been outnumbered this entire time. Command and control structures are much tighter among a like coalition that's been working together. Groups like the Bastion and the Initiative that have been working together with goons and friends for years now. I'm sorry, but Pandemic Horde, trying to do the old poacheroony on Brave and Pals is not the command and control structure that you may be looking for. I know that they're doing like a shared Discord to in some way try to increase the velocity of communication such that they could probably do one of those everybody log in things and it actually play out well for them. But I hate to say it, that's just not going to be the pathway forward for you, unfortunately. So I wouldn't put a lot of eggs in that particular basket. I'd start thinking about what we were going to be doing next, because there's a lot of crickets coming out of hostile leadership circles right now. We pick up plenty of intel with sort of despondent line members saying, will you get me the fuck out of here already? But I don't know. You're up against one of the biggest hell camps in all of EVE's history now. And oh, by the way, it's set on a hostile Keepstar grid. So good luck with that. I do not envy the people that need to make those decisions.
And I wanted to talk to Shines about this particular. I mean, look, Shines, for those of you who don't know him, where the fuck have you been? You've been under a rock or something, because Shines has been one of the lead Super Cap FCs in the game for years. You have run Titan fleets. You have been involved in every major Titan fight, X-47, and all the other ones that we did in it, as well as the M2 fights. What do you think they're trying to do? Can you walk us through how you think they're going to try to get these Titans out of M2, what they've been doing, and what the result has been? Because I don't think a lot of people realize that, like, every single day, these guys are trying to log in around downtime, and they're playing games. Can you walk us through, and then what we did yesterday, just to give these guys a little bit of an idea of what's been going on the M2 Hell Camp?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, this is what I said earlier. I can laugh at the other FCs because I'm not in that position. But if I was in their position, I would be shitting a brick. Like, it's not a good position to be in, because there is no way you can get off a hostile Keepstar grid without it turning into another massive fight until downtime. So, like, the hilarious part is these guys are so close to the Keepstar because they followed the Imperium Titans when we jumped in on the initial armor timer, and we started to move out of range of some of them. They followed us. All of the Titan fleets followed us closer to the Keepstar. So now you have Titans trapped within 100 kilometers of a Keepstar, which is the worst place you could have Titans logged off, basically. So it's just that they've kind of worked themselves into this extremely difficult position, as I'm sure everyone knows. But, like, at the moment, what they're doing is logging in just before downtime to try and cap up their ships, so that when eventually a breakout comes, they will be able to jump out at full cap if they need to. That's not going to happen. The M2 grid is just too well covered. There is no way that you're getting out all your ships. So I would imagine that they are taking into consideration the same as what they claimed on the whole timer jump in. They're expecting to lose X amount of Titans and Supers withdrawing from the system. And I don't think they know what that figure is. I don't think they have a workable plan. I think they're pushing and trying to see where the will of Goonswarm and the Imperium will break or will bend a bit. They're dropping Asbels before or after downtime, to their FCs are claiming they're dropping these Asbels to create content. That's bullshit. You're dropping Asbels in a system where your Titans are trapped. I mean, to take it back to one point, if you want to create content, you don't drop fucking Asbels in the system where all your Titans are trapped. You do it somewhere far away from there to draw goons away, right? Wear them out. So they're dropping all these fucking Asbels in M2 to get a foothold in there again. It's that simple. They need somewhere where they can have a PDS, have a bomb launcher, like a decent one, have a decent tether range, and somewhere that they can stage clones for people to immediately reship and get back into the fight in. It's that simple. And they can't really do anything about M2 until they get a either a Fortizar or an Asbel down in M2. So until that happens, I expect that the Supers will remain trapped. And then, as well as that, the biggest problem they have is that the guys that are trapped, they're not all one time zone. They didn't log in like 2 hours before downtime and take this fight. Like, these guys were EU players staying up from that night, and then the US coming online and the AU coming online. Like, you've got all different time zones strapped there, as well as all different alliances. So there's no way you can just rage ping and get all 330. What are we at now? 336, 334. I don't know, 330 something Titans online all at once. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, it's a really fun position to see guys like PGL and Villy in.
And I have to say, the thing that I find amusing is, I mean, you said it, and I want to go back through for folks who don't understand the way that this is working. So downtime is at 1100 every day. These guys will log in maybe 45 seconds, 30 seconds before downtime. The idea being that when you hit downtime, everybody's logged off, and you don't have to wait 15 minutes for a safe log. You're automatically safe logged. So they warp in. They log in. They all start e-warping away from safe points, and they start coming in to where they were on the grid when they logged off. While they're in there, they're trying to cap up. In the meantime, because we know they're going to do this, every day you have Titans lancing through the center of these areas. You've got supers and everybody ready. They're throwing newts and everything inside that area. You got void bombs, focus void bombs, all that kind of stuff going directly where these guys are landing. So even if they're trying to cap up, they can't cap up. And now we've been able to get stuff on there that's fast enough to lock and start shooting these guys, where there's a real good chance we're going to be able to kill some of these Titans before they're able to log off before downtime, especially if they make a mistake and log in too early. So the bottom line is, there is no way right now, with these guys not having a structure on the grid, for them to easily extract. Now, I'm not saying that they can never do it. It's entirely possible. And frankly, if I'm Test, I have to say they have to be kicking themselves for what they let happen in UALX, because their hell camp in UALX, completely different from this one for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is the Keepstar that they're logging, that they're trying to get off, is hostile. But they haven't figured out how to fix it. And I think it was a major strategic blunder to take the M2 fight without having an extraction plan. I think they made that blunder even worse with what happened the second time around. Then they doubled down and tripled down on it by not contesting us attacking and destroying the Fortizar off the grid. I still cannot understand why they didn't take those fights. Yes, they claimed we outformed them by 100, 200 players, but I'll tell you, you gotta go all in on that, because you lose that structure, and you're exactly what Shine said. You got nowhere to stage, you got nowhere to put clones, you got nowhere to do reships to go off, because they have to kill these bubbles. That's what they're there for. They got to kill the bubbles, because if they can't kill the bubbles, then the Titans are never going to be able to jump out. So I guess what their strategy is that they're going to suddenly decide that we're going to wait the goons out.
But it's not just Titans that are trapped there, right? Like, you've got groups, because these guys are so big, they've got all kinds of groups. So you've got the dudes who are there from NC Dot, and everything that they've been saying on Reddit and on different talk shows is probably true. The NC Dot players don't really give a shit. They know that eventually they will probably get out. They don't know when, but it's fine. It's a Titan alt. It doesn't really matter. And then you've got groups like Brave. You've got groups like Pandemic Horde. You've got different groups who are not the, these are not the people who are like super old players that have 15 accounts that can all do everything. Like Brave, for example, was told last week, just log in all your subcaps one by one, die, and get back out again. We need the characters. And it's not just Titans that are trapped. Dreads, supers, faxes, everything. So it's just a major, major fuck up, and it's great.
I mean, I have to say, we've been having a lot of fun, and I know Merc and I, we were laughing about this yesterday. Merc and Anominate and I have been going around in these little fleets and just bashing every structure that we find anywhere near M2. And we're almost completely ignored by these guys. We put an Astro House into Armor Timer, into Hull Timer last night without these guys even batting an eye. And it's like, you got 3 CSM members, 2 of the more famous people in the game sitting here in a system, farting around. I mean, they did kill me once. They hot dropped me one time and killed me once in a Nicky, but that happens every night. And they're not doing anything about it. And we're seeing these random little form-ups. When we see these form-ups from these guys, it's in Interceptors, Maybe they're taking Caracals and Ospreys out. Maybe they'll do a hack fleet, but every time they brought hack fleets in, they got bombed. I mean, if I'm on the other side, I got to be looking around thinking, okay, one, where is the leadership here? Where is the plan? How are they going to get me out? And you've seen over the last couple of days, I'm going to move into another segment of the show because I want to talk about this. I want to get your guys' opinions on it. We've seen a number of state of the alliances, or at least some kind of morale-based speeches that the leadership, at least in Legacy, have done. I haven't seen anything from PanFam. I mean, Vince doesn't really do that kind of stuff, and I haven't seen Headliner do anything. I'm sure Goblins has had talks, but I have not seen what Horde has said. But I've seen what Tess said, and I've seen what Brave said. And there was a really great article on INN, which I will link for in the chat, and I'll pull up here on the screen, that talks about what has been going on in these speeches. And Greydock went through and looked at the speeches that were given by both Dunk Dinkle as well as by PGL. And one of the things you'll notice, I mean, he talks about how the last Piggle update was completely different tone than we've seen from him before. There was no smugging. There was no, the war's almost over. There's no push. It was, we made a mistake. Coalition leadership made some critical mistakes. That's the first time that I've seen these guys talk about the fact that they're in a coalition. Normally it's all, we did this and you did this. Now they're saying, well, the larger coalition leadership made a mistake. So, you know, as common, victory has many fathers, but defeat is an orphan. That's exactly what's happening here. They're just trying to spread it around. When it comes down to the conversations, they're always they essentially admit it, which I think is just funny. They admit they didn't have a plan to get out, and I don't get it. I mean, one of the things we mentioned on the stream in M2, and I hate to keep bashing on M2, but it's as time goes on, the enormity of that battle, the impact of that battle on the war cannot be understated, and it can't be overstated either. It is critical what happened there, and the fact that they were ready to go into a massive 12-hour, 14-hour tie-dye fest Titan brawl and not have an extraction plan, it's just mind-boggling. But they admit it. They flat out say it. We didn't have it ready. And I don't know. It just, to me, that I find crazy. But the other thing that I think was pretty clear from what Pickles was saying was, Pappy is a huge coalition. There are a ton of leaders, and all of them are going to want to have their own say. And that's not an issue really that we have in the Imperium. We have far fewer massive egos to deal with in the Imperium than we do on the Pappy side. They've got a ton of players. They got a ton of people wanting to claim credit for everything when things are going well. And then all of a sudden, when things are going bad, nobody gets to make a solid decision. It's coalition leadership. I don't know how these decisions by committees are made, but it seems pretty bad, at least as far as I can tell.
I want to jump in on that.
Go ahead, Sean.
So it's like you talk about them not having a plan, and and the first thing that came to my mind was the day before M2 TAC happened, and we had the whole constellation of AT TAC reinforced, and Vili had formed up to get their guys out. They're going to escape, and then Eel counterforms, and he's like, shit, I can't do anything. So Vili goes and forms up and burns like 100 people down to Esoteria to personally run X-Wings for 5 hours. Now, if you've ever been in an X-Wings fleet and you're trying to, and you're leading it, you're warping, shooting, warping. 5 hours Vili spent chasing us around for Esoteria iHubs. Instead of spending the 5 hours doing that in space that means nothing because you've moved out, maybe you should think about coming up with a fucking plan to get your Titans out of the current situation in M2 TAC. Maybe that should be your priority. And I just think it's a lackluster ideology that they have. You get the magnitude of M2 TAC, and you're pissing around with these small little fleets trying to get your Titans out. Go big or go home. You're having supply issues. You're burning your members out. Your members are like, like what are we doing? So of course you have all these alliance leaders coming out trying to herf up and bringing the morale up. It's because they don't know what's going on. Caracals and X-Wings to get to try and extract Titans off of the grid. Are you fucking kidding? Sorry.
No, I agree. I think it's funny. And Merc, did you see Piggles? Did you read Piggles' speech or listen to it? Did you?
I did. No, I read through the one you showed there.
I mean, what's your take on what he's saying in that?
I zeroed in on what you did. The tone and tenor is significantly different than what you're used to Pro God communicating out. I just think we're reading the conditions kind of as they are. I see a lot of hostile intel in my job, in my alliance, and I have seen more mention in the last month of it's over, the war's over, than I did in the previous 8 or 9 months before that. And that's coming our direction from these guys. So I think that everybody with any experience, the Killabees, people like that on that side, Vince, Elise, etc., they know what's going on, and they know the magnitude of the situation. And I think that's why you're seeing a little bit more probably a cool hand coming out of those people, just saying, look, we'll deal with this later. We're not fucking around with this right now. If we got to figure this out in 6 months, we'll figure it out in 6 months. That's fine. Test, on the other hand, they've sort of been the one that is screeching through this entire process and have been on the leadership side. And I say this in a polite way. They've been pretty insufferable, much the way I'm sure they feel our leadership is when we communicate to our people. But there's not a lot of that going around right now, because I don't think anyone is super confident in the status or continuation of the war. I just think there's too many resources there. If you listened into the fireside earlier today, I said, it is not far-fetched to estimate that they have more shit in value trapped on that M2 grid than we have every single structure dropped in any of the regions that we control. So we need to perform accordingly with relation to that grid. So it's a tough spot to be in.
Before we go to Braves, the Brave Alliance meeting, because I want to talk about that, because I want to let Shines gloat a little bit, because man, they do not like in it right now. Keisha, can you talk about how much you guys have stolen up in Esoteria? Because I keep seeing it. I mean, you guys are funding like your Alliance SRP for like another 2 years solid, based on the stuff that they're just leaving lying around. Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, we've got so much in the sense of like in the way of like assets that we've pulled off of test. They're pretty much funding our insurgency over here. So we managed to pull up. We had a little bit of intel come in, and we pulled 5 for 5 Tatars come up. So maybe that's why they're using the Asbels and M2 TAC, because their
Tatars are gone. They don't have any more. Right?
Tatars gone. They don't have any more. So, so they left. Structures are abandoning. Corps are. They're not managing their stuff well because they've moved to Delft. So, I think we're probably at about 80 to 100 billion. In change. And they gave us a core the other day, which was really nice of them, because we just bought a Fortizar off of Red Alliance. So we plopped that in there. And it's just, they keep putting up these jumpers and stuff. They're not defending things. I mean, rightfully so. I mean, we're probably at about 100 billion, plus everything that we salvage and reuse to just fund the effort against them. And so we thank Test in that regard. Thank you.
I got to say, I mean, Test must be so rich that they can just hand out assets to the bad guys. I guess, hey, if you can do that, why not, right? But I know if we had done that, and I know they loved to crow when they stole a bunch of bombs from us early in the war, and now the exact same thing is happening to them in Esoteria, and it's kind of quiet. I don't hear a lot. Now, next up, I want to talk about the Brave Save the Alliance, and then I want to get your guys' opinions. We're going to do a Piercing the Corporate Veil real quick, and then we're going to go into Karmafleet Birthday. I want to talk about the quantum cores, because I think that's important for us to talk about, because I think it does have implications on the meta, and I got 2 solid FCs here that I want to hear from. So Brave does their Alliance meeting, and I'll throw that back up on the screen here. They do their Alliance meeting a couple days after Piggles, and then I have to say, it's kind of cute. The number of State of the Alliances from the downstream smaller groups in Legacy they've been coming back to back, and we've been looking at these speeches, and they look a lot the same. Like somebody wrote one speech and gave it to everybody and said, "Here, go tell your members this stuff." Now, I don't want to spread any conspiracy theories, but when you're working off the same kind of talking points, that's kind of funny, especially when it's like almost word for word in some cases. Weird. Anyway, I will say this. The Brave State of the Alliance, completely different tone than we have ever heard from Dunk before. I mean, the only time I have ever seen Dunk get fired up as much as he was in this speech is when he's talking about how much he hates CCP's scarcity plan. He was even more fired up than that. And I'm telling you, that's a lot for Dunk. But I mean, he was swearing a lot, which is, I love it because I love to hear him say that stuff. But I mean, some of these quotes, it's push back at all these knuckleheads fucking with us in our home. And it's time for Brave to stand together and start forming the kinds of fleets that we can form and smacking these fuckers in the face. And I want you to smash these. He said that at least 3 or 4 times. Shines, that has to make you feel good, right? Because he's talking about you.
I mean, he's talking about a lot of people, right? Like the stuff that's happening in Catch, like Init's doing a lot, but it's not just Init. There's a lot of people have taken advantage of the fact that Brave aren't there anymore, or well, they weren't there anymore. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, look, I kind of feel sorry for Dunk because, as far as I'm aware, he's not an FC. But he's the one who now has to deal with all the shit that Legacy has brought down upon him, and it's kind of. They were saying in the update that it's like we're going to leave deck clones in T5, right? But that's not the case. Like, these guys clearly, everything I've seen in the last week, Brave does not give a shit about Delve anymore because they're just doing everything they can in Catch. Like, there was the fleets today, for example, the DTAC-W iHub that was so important to every other Legacy FC, and yet Brave has 200 people with the rest of Voltron chasing an Init fleet around in Curse, right? Like, it's all just very they're saying some stuff to kind of, keep Legacy happy, but really they're just back in Catch, and all they really care about is Catch, apart from the stuff that's lobbed off in M2.
I mean, rightfully so, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look, we've seen some of the conversations that have happened between Brave and Test, like the way that, well, I'm saying Test, but I'm assuming that the guys in there are from Test. Like, forget about Catch. We'll come back and save Catch afterwards. Like, they can't even fucking take Delve. So what's to say that they're going to be able to do anything in Catch afterwards? Trust us after they've gotten all their shit trapped in M2. Yeah, it's a lot of empty promises, and I have a feeling that Brave have kind of had enough of that, and they're back in Catch now, and this is their thing. Like, we, as soon as they came back, we wanted to test the waters a little bit. We refed 2 iHubs instead of contesting our fleets on the iHubs. They went and tried to ref our Fortizar in oh shit. And then when they seen us coming back to defend that, they formed up on a gate. We jumped in to them, a fight ensued, and then they got the holy shite bombed out of them by Pando again. And then they had to limp home. So, they're like, Dunk is coming out and saying, kill them all, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Their fleets are dying. Their guys, like our guys, are now camping them because we know they're tight on ISK. We're getting loads of kills every day. They're not making ISK. It's just Brave are really not in a good position. And I don't think they really know what to do about it.
Well, it's one thing they could do about it is there's a golden ticket up for bid. If you're interested, talk to Mittens. It's sitting out there, guys. Your free ticket out of the war. It's right there. You just got to ask for it. All right. So obviously, part of the point of this part of the show we wanted to talk about is just, look, there's a lot of attention on Delve. A lot of attention on the main Pappy versus Imperium in Delve, but the reality is this war is broader than just Delve, and you would think that, given the fact that their goal is they're invading us, that they realizing now that they have overcommitted, they control vast swaths of territory that are within range of our guys. We go out and mess with them, they've got to pull guys off the front lines. That's the strategy we've been employing, and it's been working. And the reality is, Ketch is on fire, Esoteria is on fire, stuff's fun anchoring, fleets are dying, their numbers are dropping. This is exactly what we wanted to see. You couple that with the fact that they've already proven that there's no plan in place. You're a Pappy line member, and in the back of your head, anytime one of your SCs says jump, you got to be asking yourself, do I really know what these guys are, that they have my best interest at heart? Is there really a plan here? Or am I going to end up either logged off for a month or dying in a curse of bombs flying in from Pando or flying in from boat? And it's you got to question. You got to be at some point. These guys are going to take that and they're going to say, "Look, I don't trust my own leadership. Maybe I'll go play Cyberpunk." And I think that's going to have a big impact on this thing going forward. So that's the end of the Nullsec Power Hour, which lasted 45 minutes. We're going to do Piercing the Corporate Veil because I want to talk about the only real big CCP news that happened this week, which was the rollout of the quantum core mechanic throughout all of New Eden. All right. As you guys saw, and we noted before, patch notes on Tuesday, now it is required if you want to have a structure anywhere in EVE Online, in Nullsec, or in Lowsec, you have to have a quantum core in the structure. If you don't have a core in the structure, no tether, no fitting inside the structure, no repair inside or outside. That's a pretty big deal. And I think we have already started to notice, and Merc, you can talk about this, as we're in this weird in-between phase where new structures that get dropped have to have a core, but existing grandfathered structures don't. So when you're flying around in space, you see all these blue structures on the screen. Maybe that has a core in it, maybe it doesn't, and you don't find out till you get there. That's had a pretty significant impact, I think, on existing alliances, especially on those that are controlling and holding their own space and that are taking their time to get their stuff cored. What do you guys think this is going to do, at least in the short term, in terms of the war, but in the short term in terms of the rest of the game? Do you think that you're going to start seeing folks going after these structures because it's obvious they're not that important, or do you think it's gonna basically be a wash? But Merc, I want to throw it over to you, and we can talk a little bit about what we've been seeing.
I think you'll see some Titan pilots that are probably not completely paying attention, maybe run up a bridge or something off a structure that isn't cored. It's something, there's a lot more conversation going on about it right now. People are certainly talking about it. I know all the big groups are making plans. We're making plans ourselves just to try to accommodate and make sure that we have enough coverage. What you have to keep in mind is there's sort of now two operational sets related to structures. There's the set of rules related to the core, as Bruce was talking about, with tether, repair, things like that, fitting, etc. And then there's a set of rules related to the fuel state and is there a service module running. That second set is where you start to get into the structure's performance and behaviors under attack and reinforcement. That's where that's a little bit different. So when you kind of separate them into two lanes, it's a lot easier to grasp what's going on. Not having a core doesn't make your structure abandoned or anything like that. That stuff is the service module related stuff. So I think you'll see some of the chaff stuff, the littler structures, groups will start making plays at though, maybe throw 3 or 4 Lashaks at it, see if you can blow one up and sneak away with a core in the dead of night. But I think it'll also probably likely end up with the bigger groups reducing the overall footprint of citadels, which perhaps that is a part of the original design intent and it's accomplishing that. But they're awfully expensive. So I don't see, for the little stuff, it doesn't make too much of a difference, maybe doubles the cost that you're going to be putting down or something like that. The bigger stuff, you got to kind of think about it and be smart with how you handle that. But maybe they do create, some small groups that can pop them. But I have to imagine after a certain point, once those structures have been worn down and blown up, they're probably not going to be replaced. So it may be like a one-time thing. You remember when Abandoned Structure Citadel State came out? There was this flurry of let's blow up everything we possibly can and see what happens. Maybe you see a little bit of that for a while, and then we go back to normal conditions.
Keisha, can you tell a little bit about what you guys have been seeing in ESO in terms of the core thing? Have you seen a lot of uncored structures besides the ones that are unanchored, or what's your take have been on this on the core thing?
Yeah, I'd probably say, obviously it'd be like a lot more, but they're unanchoring a lot of their structures, a lot of their Athnors aren't there anymore. So probably, if I were to spitball, maybe a high 60% isn't cored. I mean, it's going to come down to like cost vs risk ratio. You know, it's like once it's gone, do you really need that structure, or do you kind of narrow in the systems or certain constellations where, you know, maybe you don't need an Athanor, Fortizar, Athnar in every system, just a key system where you have like jump bridges and whatnot. And then to Merck's point, it's yeah, once they're gone, you know, the ones that are cored, you'll probably see them defend them more. But I don't think you'll see a flurry of structures up just because of that initial cost. And if your enemies are in the area and you're not able to defend it well, I mean, you're just giving them a, you know, you're giving them a golden ticket to go cash that in.
Shaz, what have you guys been seeing? What have we been seeing up in Catch and Curse?
The initial days, I don't think there was a whole lot cored. I think Brave had done quite a bit. I'm not sure exactly what, to be perfectly honest. The biggest things we were keeping an eye on were the Udish Q and the Oh Shit Keep Stars. They weren't cored originally, so I was kind of hoping to snag a Titan kill or two on them. But they got cored. Obviously, all of Init structures are cored already. We employed a tactic where we lost all of our structures.
That made it easier.
The war, exactly. So everything we had to come in with afterwards has been cored. It's yeah. I mean, there was a Valkyrie alliance, so Fire Coalition lost an Erebus already on a Keep Star because the Keep Star wasn't cored in one of the Angel regions, Wicked Creek, maybe. I can't remember. They lost an Erebus to Dread Bomb. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but I think the most interesting thing about it is you have to pay attention to what is and isn't cored. And I think that's a really weird place to be in at the moment that we're probably not going to be in this time next year, because a lot of structures will either be cored or not. But like, you have to be extremely careful with what you want to do on a structure now. It's not just warp to a structure and get instantly safe, right? It's you actually have to pay attention. So it's at the moment it's interesting.
And I think, you know, from what I've seen, and Blazing Bunny put a good post up on Reddit saying that this has nothing to do with existing structure spam, and he's right. But I think it will have an impact on, obviously, on future structure spam. But that we're in this weird, like, in-between phase where new structures have cores, old structures don't. People are identifying which structures are important to them and putting cores in them, and the other ones are just kind of there. So I think there's maybe going to be a 6-month period when you're really going to have to worry and wonder every time you land on a grid, does this have a core in it or not? And you have to pay attention to that. And I think we're going to see some mess ups that are where people are going to be able to take advantage of. And I like that. I think that's fun. I think that's fun gameplay. It's one of the reasons why I've been advocating on the CSM. I would love to see some kind of meaningful choice, some kind of way to make Tether less oppressive as it is. It's such a critical aspect. It'd be a great way to find a way to either turn it off or to find some way to make structures where you have to make a choice that's meaningful, that you can't just repeat everywhere in the system. Anything like that, where Tether is something that can be disrupted, I think that would be great gameplay. And I think this is giving us a little bit of a test bed for that, to see the types of things that can happen when you've got an otherwise functional structure that has guns, that has bombs, that has a PDS, that they still work, but it doesn't have tether, it doesn't have repair. That creates all kinds of different things that can happen, and I kind of dig that. So I'm looking forward to seeing that down the road and seeing what ends up happening. But I think for right now, that's probably only something that's going to last for a couple more months until everything's either dead or cored, and there's no random structures lying around out there that don't have cores in them yet. All right, so that's the Piercing the Corporate Veil segment. I want to thank Shines and Keisha for joining us today. You guys can stick around if you want. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our top story in the last 5 minutes, which is Karmafleet Turn 6. We're just going to wrap up. And everybody heard me just say that because I forgot to mute myself like a fucking idiot. You all heard me just say that, so there you go. You get a little bit of behind the scenes on the Meta Show. All right, everybody. Happy birthday to Karmafleet. Merc, take it away. Tell us a little bit about Karmafleet turning 6, what it means to you, why you care about it so much. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. It's a big deal for us. If you were in Goonswarm at the time, early in 2015, you will remember a post on the War Room by my predecessor, Scion, called The Grand Experiment, where Scion, as the chief of staff of Goons, was essentially making the case for creating a new pilot-friendly corporation inside of the confines of Goonswarm. Back then, I was a little baby paper pusher in Brave Newbies. This is back when Pandemic Legion and those guys were running the wrecking balls, and the undock in GE Tech 8 or Victor Tech 3, depending on where we were staged at the time, was just a clusterfuck of Aeons with sentry drones and things like that. And we kind of always had the foot of bigger, stronger, prolific super capital groups on top of us. And Brave was nothing to shake a stick at. What started as Cormorants turned into Feroxes, grew up and became Rail Tengus and things. I mean, we were filling up full T3 fleets at the time. So sub-capital, Brave could show up big time. But when it came to caps, they were just getting wrecked. So we often found ourselves in communication with Goons. We'd trap something using sub-capital dominance and get something stuck that we couldn't kill. We'd send a message and boat would shoot out of a wormhole 90 seconds later like a hero or whatever. It was just a lot of that kind of stuff. So we had a pretty good relationship with some of the Diplos, of Goons at the time. So I remember when they first reached out and just said, what would you guys think about this? Marconius Porkbutt, the CEO before me in Karmafleet, we had a lot of talks about it, what it would look like if we thought we were up to the challenge. And I'll never forget it. There was a Friday night where he and I kind of packed all our stuff up in our capitals, gave word to the folks that we were very friendly with, hey, we're going to be leaving, we're going to be going to do this thing with Goons. I should mention that Goons just said, hey, Brave, why don't you come be this new pilot-friendly corp? So the opportunity was very much on the table. Just sort of, I always use the example when I'm talking to folks in my corporation. When you're a corporation in Goons, you just sort of climb into this exoskeleton, and the Alliance takes care of you in an amazing way, kind of like one of those things from Aliens or Avatar or something like that. Brave wasn't interested in that. The leadership at the time was like, hell to the no, let's not do that. So we said, okay, then we'll go do this. We left on good terms, didn't steal anything, didn't do anything shitty. Go figure. I'm sure this is going to come as a shock to many. We drank like way too many beers as we were bouncing our way up there. And at some point, I remember shit hit the fan and we ended up getting bumped off of a station by a Macarial and losing the dreads that we were taking with us, our property, of course. But when we eventually got there, it was really interesting just because Goons is an older group, a lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of insider stuff that you don't know about when you first walk in the door, like the 07 stuff and signing your posts. And we had to just kind of fuck our way through that, as best that we could. And I remember we had 12 people, in the corporation, I think at the end of the first day, and it was hundreds a couple days later. And I remember talking to Porkbutt at the time and just saying, dude, we got to entertain these people. We got to come up with something for everybody to do. And that was sort of the genesis of what are we going to do with our group? How are we going to take care of them? It worked out really good in Declan because Declan's a super, super wide region in a way that Delve is not. So Karmafleet just kind of set up in the Pentagoon up there in the top northwestern side. Goons held everything down towards YAO, and it was an absolutely great environment. If you were around in those days, 2015, early 2016, it was an absolutely incredible time, a lot of fun. We got pushed out of our space shortly thereafter during the first casino war. We didn't have anything to really give a shit about. So it was just like, okay, we're going to Saranen now. And okay, and so it was a lot of fun. We've lost regions, we've been around the block for a pretty long time now. I can say with total and complete confidence, what was a new pilot-friendly corporation that celebrated with great fanfare when we got our first super capital back in 2015 is now, without a shadow of a doubt, the single largest super capital and Titan fleet held by a corporation in EVE Online, and it is not even remotely close. That's a fact, Jack. That's something I'm super proud of. I think it speaks to kind of the wealth proliferation of the Imperium over the last 5 years, and Karmafleet was in the right place at the right time. We're really happy with that relationship. I tell our people all the time, we're going to be goons forever. I want to be the last group standing here when the light goes off. So to come from those humble beginnings when we were the grand experiment and you were having to kind of have one of the luminaries of goons talk the other goons into not tearing this tribe of newbies apart and eating them or something, I think we've come a really, really long way. And nowadays, you know, half the directorate and Goon Swarm as members of Karmafleet. There was a time we weren't even allowed to like join the fun groups. They're like, you fucking spies, you're not allowed to come do this shit. Now we're running those groups, so we will have the last laugh. Been a wonderful experience. I think the most amazing part of it is because I've been in a bunch of different null groups myself. We do the real life stuff better than anybody. In 2015, at Vegas, for instance, I think there were 3 people in my corporation there. It was me, Porky, and Zenuria. Forgive me if anybody else was there and I don't remember, but 2 years later, we had 65 people in our corporation in Vegas, and the number gets bigger every damn year. Super, super proud of that stuff. I just really, really like it. I like that we've created sort of this social environment where people can do their own thing. We're accepting of all humans, you know, and all the craziness that goes along with that stuff. And, you know, whether we're off riding bikes, goofing around in Cyberpunk, or playing PUBG, or dicking around drinking a zillion beers on Twitch late at night bashing a structure, we do enjoy each other's company an awful lot, and I'm really hoping that we can do this another 6 years. So thanks for letting me have an opportunity to talk about it today. Really proud of everybody. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday to Karmafleet. I have to say, I got to know the Karmafleet guys after I was on the CSM. We went to the summit and I hung out with Merc and Nam, and we had such a good time that I wanted to hang out with them more. They invited me to Saturday Night's Forum, which is like the premier event in EVE, and as far as I'm concerned, and it's been my steady Saturday night for the last 3 years. And I got to know some of these guys in Karmafleet, and they're amazing. They're just good, fun dudes, and we have a ton of fun every Saturday night. And I go in and we have set up things. We always do. I always ask them how the meta show went, and they always bust my nuts about what I fucked up today. Like, I guarantee you, the hot micing is going to be a very big subject on the stream tonight. We got Mine One, our DJ, who's out there, who spins for us every Saturday night, which is great. I after a couple months of hanging out, they made me an honorary member, so I'm an honorary KF member, and I'm happy to say that. I love Init, I love my guys in SDK, but Karmafleet's my home away from home, and those guys are just great. So whether it's hanging out with Neo, hanging out with Sadis and Bruden, Smish and all these other guys, and just the inside jokes and talking to King Arthur and having Riddick bust my nuts every time we don't show up for a week on the meta show. Just all these guys that are out there, they're great, and we love them to death. You know, and I frankly, all the guys that I play games with outside of In and Now are all Karmafleet guys. Sadis and Smish and Johnny and Milpucky and those guys, we play games all the time. So these are the types of guys that make the game fun. That's the reason why we play EVE. It's a lot of the social stuff. And I'll tell you, Karmafleet's figured it out. So if you're looking for a group, if you're in one of these bad groups and you hate it, and you're like, why am I full with all these toxic rejects? Maybe you should check out Karmafleet. They're a good bunch of dudes. And on that note, happy birthday, Karma. And we have hit the 5 o'clock hour. We did it. We managed to do a whole show without mittens. I can't believe it. I'm so proud of us. So I'm going to say, Merc, do you have anything else to say before we cut this loose and get ready for SNS? Karmafleet is recruiting. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. We are recruiting. Happy birthday. Everybody remember, keep some attention on that M2 camp. I'm told there is important shit afoot there. So let's not let our foot off the pedal down there. Keep doing a good job.
Frank is in the same place Mittens is. He's taking a nap. He doesn't have a show to do. So there's no Frank today. No Mittens today. You got Merc and me trying to look good for you guys one last week. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. This has been the Meta Show for January 16th, 2021. I'm Brisk Rubal, joined by Merkel Chen. Thank you to Darkshines and Keisha from the Initiative and Bastion who joined us today. Pine cones delenda est, and you stay classy. Nui.